Good morning, distinguished authorities and delegates from the member states of the Latin American Energy Organization, OLADE. Welcome, representatives, international organizations, diplomats, and OLADE officials. For logistical purposes, do note that we have live interpretation available in Spanish and English. If you want to access these options, please make sure to click on the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your screens. Over there, you will be able to choose the language you want to listen to. The organization is honored to be conducted the 51st meeting of ministers within the framework of the 6th Energy Week. Be most welcome. We also want to thank the following authorities for being here. Secretary of Energy of the Republic of Argentina, Norman Darío Martinez, Minister for Energy, SMEs, and Entrepreneurships from Barbados, Gary Simons, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources from the Republic of Ecuador, Juan Carlos Bermejo, Minister of Energy and Mining from the Republic of Guatemala, Eduardo Pimentel, First Minister of the Guyana Republic, Secretary of Energy from the Republic of Panama, Jorge Rivera, Minister of Energy and Mining from the Uruguayan Republic, Minister of High Energy Technologies of Bolivia, Álvaro Arbeñez, Vice Minister Miguel Otero, Vice Minister of Energy from the Republic of Costa Rica, Ronaldo Castro, Vice Minister of Energy and Mining from the Republic of Cuba, Yuribia Montes, Vice Minister of Mining from the Republic of Paraguay, Carlos Saldívar, Vice Minister of Electricity of the Republic of Peru, Jose Martín Jalea, Vice Minister of Energy and Mining from the Dominican Republic, Rafael Gomez. We also want to welcome the Ministry of Energy from Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, also the General Director of IRENA, Francisco La Camera, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Mary Busbraini, and the Manager of Infrastructure and Energy from the IGB, Ariel Shepes. We also want to welcome ambassadors, representatives, and delegations from member states of the OLADE who are joining us here this morning. We will now begin with the inaugural session of the 51st meeting of ministers of OLADE. We now want to yield the floor to the Minister of Energy from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Stuart Young. Go ahead, Mr. Young.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Your Excellencies, Ministers of OLADE, member countries, Your Excellency Alfonso Blanco, Executive Secretary of OLADE, distinguished delegates of OLADE member countries, representatives from the Permanent Secretariat of OLADE, specially invited guests. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, wherever you are. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency Alfonso Blanco, Executive Secretary, for the warm welcome and introduction to today's discussion, and in particular to our Lady Chair that was just doing the introductions, or not Chair, sorry, but our Chairman of Ceremonies. It's been a distinct honor for Trinidad and Tobago to assume the presidency of the highest governing body of OLADE and to play a leading role in the pursuit of organizational objectives as set out in the Lima Agreement. Although we were unable to meet in person due to the difficulties and restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic, the unwavering commitment of all member countries was definitely felt through your active participation in the activities of OLADE, as well as through your invaluable contribution to policy deliberations in the meetings of the governing bodies. I know the circumstances of the past year have been difficult. However, the work program of OLADE never faltered and continued to achieve significant milestones. These achievements are in large part owed to you. Your Excellencies, as member countries remain steadfast to the vision of cooperation for the sustainable development and energy security of the region, I thank you for making Trinidad and Tobago's experience upon assuming the OLADE presidency a truly positive and fruitful one, even in this difficult pandemic. During our tenure, Trinidad and Tobago was proud to reaffirm our commitment as a founding member of OLADE and to serve with the highest regard to this auspicious body. It is within this context that we supported initiatives and opportunities for the advancement of our shared goals and the sustainable development of our energy sector. These actions include: 1, investment to reactivate the economies of pandemic-stricken countries, create jobs and modernize economic structures, all while promoting an inclusive and sustainable energy transition. 2, energy integration to support energy security. 3, natural gas as a transition and long-term clean fuel to support the energy transition agenda and to support economic reactivation agenda in the hydrocarbon sector. And 4, adoption of digitization solutions in the energy sector in the face of this pandemic. It has been a privilege to work alongside Uruguay as Vice President, Executive Secretary Blanco and his team, as well as fellow member countries, to bring these proposals to fruition. I make reference to remarks by my late and former colleague and friend, the Honorable Minister Franklin Khan, a great energy stalwart, when he assumed this position 1 year ago. He said, "Let OLADE, Latin America and the Caribbean be a global voice in this energy transition," unquote. Within the past year, our voices continue to resonate despite the escalation of the COVID-19 pandemic. OLADE continued to fulfill its objectives and functions, carrying out all the planned activities, which has also been reinforced with the development of workshops, seminars, conferences, among other virtual meetings of great significance and impact for the regional energy sector. OLADE was able to project its reach toward economic recovery and sustainability for its member states. The past year has also been a testament to the fact that the Caribbean and Latin America can work together to achieve common goals, particularly in the field of energy. As the world grapples to collaborate in striking the balance between energy security and sustainability, OLADE must continue to serve as a sterling example of how this collaboration across countries can be achieved. Today's occasion is a tangible demonstration of this and how collaboration and joint partnerships can yield real benefits to the energy sector, member countries of OLADE, and by extension, the Latin American and Caribbean region. Trinidad and Tobago looks forward to the continued work and participation with OLADE as we fulfill our responsibilities and work towards the shared energy agenda. Through this shared agenda, regionally, each of our countries benefit nationally. As such, I would like to thank OLADE for the technical assistance that Trinidad and Tobago received. OLADE has provided the institutional strengthening needed for the realization of various plans, programs, and projects related to our national energy agenda and mandate. Wherever and whenever there was a need for support, Executive Secretary Blanco and the Secretariat were always ready to respond, and their diligence and commitment are greatly appreciated. Today, we meet on this occasion, among other points on the agenda, in order to comply with OLADE's regulatory provision to transition the presidency of the 51st meeting of ministers of OLADE. Therefore, Trinidad and Tobago, in its capacity as president of the 50th meeting of ministers of OLADE, is pleased to officially transfer the OLADE presidency to the capable leadership of His Excellency Omar Paganini, Minister of Industry, Energy and Mining of the Oriental Republic of Uruguay. Your Excellency, It is my honor to be the first to officially welcome you as Uruguay as the new president of the Meeting of Ministers of OLADE. Your support as vice president during Trinidad and Tobago's tenure has been unparalleled. In turn, you can be assured of Trinidad and Tobago's support for the certain success of your presidency and stewardship as you lead this august body into the future. Your Excellencies, as our region joins the world in transitioning to an energy system that is simultaneously accessible, secure, and sustainable, we must never forget that the mandate and work of this esteemed organization is now more important than ever. Remain assured of Trinidad and Tobago's commitment to OLADE, and I look forward to a productive meeting. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, señor ministro Young.
Thank you, Minister Young. Thank you for your very kind words towards the organization, and thank you for the support throughout your tenure. We now move to the incoming chairmanship, Minister Omar Paganini from Uruguay. Good morning, Honorable Mr. Stuart Young, appointed Minister of Industry, Energy and Mining of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Alfonso Blanco Bonilla, Executive Secretary of OLADE, representatives from international organizations, distinguished excellencies, ministers of energy of Latin America and the Caribbean, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good morning. In the first place, I would like to thank you on behalf of the country that I represent for the work of the outgoing presidency, for fostering the agenda of this organization, and for the support that they will provide to us in our upcoming work. I also want to recognize the work of the executive secretary and of his team. In the past few years, we have been undergoing a very particular situation across the world and in America and Latin America and the Caribbean because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has led us to restrict our activities and to force virtual relations. Within that context, we do want to thank you for all the efforts in order to successfully work in these virtual spaces that have been so important for the region in order to continue with the labor of our organization. It is an honor to assume the chairmanship of the highest governing body of OLADE, and I also want to reinforce the commitment of Uruguay as part of this organization.
We can exchange experiences and knowledge on the role of Latin America and the Caribbean in a global energy scenario that poses challenges towards decarbonization of our energy systems, with which we need to act. The role of OLADE as part of the energy integration program in the region is of utmost importance, with a trajectory of over 50 years since its creation. It has contributed to energy interest, promoting actions to accelerate transitions, working with integration, protection, conservation, and defense of energy resources through international cooperation and action for climate in Latin America and the Caribbean. Additionally, OLADE's role is becoming more important considering that the energy sector is one of the engines for sustainable economic recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic. Our country has experienced over the last decade a true energy revolution with an average participation of 97% of renewables in electricity generation, including hydroelectrical, solar energy, wind energy, among others. Our primary energy mix means that we have more than 65% of renewables, and we still have a 38% of dependency on fossil fuels, on which we need to work. Also, Uruguay has energy access of more than 99.7% of its population, including in that concept the well, including the concepts of social justice and gender equality. The challenge that we have at a global scale is to keep on delving into transformations and move on to a second energy transformation stage. The world is focusing on electric mobility and the possibility of avoiding fossil fuels in industries such as shipments, air traffic, maritime traffic, using hydrogen as an element that is key in this transition, using battery vehicles and long distance transportation such as maritime and aerial traffic, as well as heavy traffic, are items on the agenda for the next couple of years. We must also remember digitalization, which is a transversal tool that is becoming more and more relevant to support energy transitions in a number of ways. As part of this process, we know that OLADE is going to play a key role, and Uruguay intends to provide its support to the best of its possibilities, which is a challenge that we need to take on together with the rest of Latin American and Caribbean countries. I would like to wrap up by thanking you all for your attention and wish you all a great day of work that I'm sure will be extremely fruitful. We are accepting the challenge of presiding OLADE's maximum level of hierarchy. Thank you very much. Thank you, incoming president of the ministerial meeting of OLADE, the Ministry of Energy, Industry and Mining of Uruguay, Omar Paganini. We would like to ask Alfonso Blanco, the executive secretary of OLADE, to proceed. Okay, so the outbound president of OLADE, Minister of Energy of Trinidad and Tobago, and the incoming president, Omar Paganini from Uruguay, and the vice president, secretary of energy in Argentina, Darío Martínez, minister of energy of Latin America and the Caribbean, vice ministers, official representatives of our member countries, to all the directors and companies and organizations that have provided support to this Energy Week, and all the attendees that are joining us in our organization, also virtually, which has yielded some really good results. Please feel welcome from Quito, Ecuador, which is the headquarters of OLADE. And you're welcome to this ministerial meeting of OLADE, this 51st ministerial meeting, which is taking place virtually. I would like to start by paying homage to Minister Franklin Young from Trinidad and Tobago, and I would like to express our condolences to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Minister Khan was a convinced promoter of regional multilateralism and provided great support throughout our administration. Also, I would like to thank Honorable Minister Stuart Young for your presidency of OLADE throughout 2021 and the support that we had from your country and the progress that we made in a number of areas that were a priority under your presidency. So thank you very much, Minister Young, for your kind words before as well. We have felt extremely comfortable working with your country, and we would like to emphasize the great progress that the organization has made under your presidency in a very complex context for the region. So I would like to welcome Minister Paganini as the President and Vice President Secretary Martinez to integrate the governing body of our organization. And I would like to express our absolute commitment to keeping on working on the strengthening dialogue platforms and integration platforms for the region to try to answer and respond to all the problematics that we may face in the future. The pandemic in 2020 hit Latin America and the Caribbean, which worsened the economic situation in the region. According to the report for the World Bank, Latin America and the Caribbean is the region that has suffered the most as a result of the COVID pandemic, and the contraction of our economies in 2020 was of around 22.7%, which has had a direct impact both on the economy and social issues in the region. Towards the end of 2020, we could see that the contraction of the energy demand as a result of the pandemic for Latin America and the Caribbean was around 4.1%, and the total energy offer was shrunk by around 6%. But even when we thought there was going to be effects on the projects, well, public policies and the development of the sector, reality showed us that our region is making progress in spite of all these adversities. In 2020, we achieved 61% of renewables in installed capacity generation, which is 60% of our goal, according to the RELAC initiative. We have advanced in our gradual decarbonization of our systems, enhancing renewability in terms of primary energy for 33% of Latin America and the Caribbean. We had more than 11 gigawatts of renewable non-conventional energies in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, and we had operations of around 23 gigawatts operating on fossil fuels out of the way, which shows the commitment of our region. We made huge progress in terms of regulations in our country. We had milestone in terms of modernization, planning, and the development of a modern sector that is oriented to energy transition with greater digitalization that is gradually incorporating actions on sustainable mobility, new energy vectors such as hydrogen, energy storage, and energy efficiency. We have 13 national energy information systems that are implemented, going and strengthening the institutions that are led by the ministries of energy and energy agencies of our countries. To back up this process, to strengthen our institutions and information systems, this year we launched the mobile application for statistical information for Latin America and the Caribbean that can be downloaded from all stores on your phones. This mobile app is yet another step in which OLADE is contributing to the region with a modern, easy-to-access proposal where anyone from the general public can have access to really interesting information. So OLADE is getting closer and is being more committed to the population, creating better communication. Working together with the IDB, we have also made available statistical information for the region, always following the idea of promoting synergies and collaborations between organizations. Even in a weakening context for several economic indicators and worse poverty numbers in the region, we have still tried to bridge the gap of access. We have better electric coverage, and we are reducing to 17 million the number of Latin Americans and Caribbeans that don't have access to energy. And much of this was achieved in Haiti, which we celebrate, and we'd like to encourage Haiti to keep on making progress in this regard. So that is why in 2020 and 2021, the pandemic has not slowed us down. We have kept our supply, we have ensured energy supplies, and we have shown that the energy sector can be, as Minister Young was saying and Mr. Paganini was saying, in something that will make our economic recovery more dynamic, which is so necessary for our region. We have also shown that our energy systems are robust and likely less vulnerable to external factors, and that building these systems has allowed us to have a very diversified energy mix with lower levels of carbon if compared to other parts of the world, integrating renewables to a large extent, always following cost efficiency criteria. OLADE has been a big part of this progress. We have added new value, focusing on all of our areas of action. And OLADE nowadays works together with the world and is a projection platform of the processes that have taken place in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have made available in the region a modern support that responds to most of the needs of the region. And from the beginning, we were convinced that the energy sector is one of the required engines to reactivate the economies after the pandemic. And we can say that this is being proved. And we do so by ensuring sustainable development, promoting inclusive and fair transitions. But let us not forget that the pandemic has left a scar in our societies. It has displaced part of our populations and widened the gaps between rich and poor. We have suffered, and that is why, and because of these people that have suffered so much, it's our responsibility to act to try to get that back, that well-being back for our people, and to provide better access to energy and better living conditions to all the citizens in Latin America. So please feel welcome, and let's hope for a fruitful dialogue and conversations today. Thank you and welcome. Thank you, Executive Secretary of OLADE, Alfonso Blanco. And now we will move on to the preparatory session of the 51st Ministerial Meeting. Secretary, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Outgoing President and Incoming President. According to the agenda, which I kindly asked to have on the screen, we will start our 51st Ministerial Meeting of OLADE. Within the framework of our agenda for this session, we have the inaugural session, and now we will give the presidency and the vice presidency of the Ministerial Meeting to Uruguay and Argentina. We give a warm welcome and we thank the outgoing presidency of Trinidad and Tobago, and a big round of applause to them.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President, moving on with the next item on the agenda, we will move to the presentation of delegations to verify quorum, if you agree. Yes, sir.
Tatiana, por favor.
Okay. Tatiana, please, if you could be of assistance with the delegation's verification. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Presidency. Thank you, Secretary. Now we will alphabetically name all the countries to not only verify quorum, but also ask delegations to introduce themselves and present themselves. So Argentina.
Adelante, Argentina, por favor.
Argentina, please. Hello. Good morning. I'm Daniel Martinez. I'm the Minister of Energy of Argentina. I'm also with the Energy Secretary, Santiago and Guillermo. Thank you, Argentina. Now the Ministerial Delegation of Barbados. Barbados has confirmed their participation. Perhaps they have not yet been able to connect. So we're moving on to the Ministerial Delegation of Belize. Good morning. I am Ryan Cobb. I'm the Energy Director representing Honorable Minister from the Ministry of Public Utilities and Energy. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Belize. Let's go with the Bolivian Ministerial Delegation. Good morning. A warm welcome to all of our brother and sister countries. I am Alvaro Arnes, Vice Minister of Hydrocarbons and Energy, on behalf of Minister Franklin. Thank you, Bolivia. Let's move with the Ministerial Delegation of Brazil. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. I am here on behalf of the Ministry of Mining and Energy of Brazil. Our delegation is made up of myself, the Director of Mining and Energy, and Engineer Barreto from the Directorate of Mineral Resources. Thank you. Thank you, Brazil. Let us move on with the presentation of the Chilean Ministerial Delegation. Hi, good morning, everyone. Gabriela Aldunate, member of the Ministry of Energy on behalf of Minister Huet. Today with me are Adelaida Data, a professional from the International Relations Office. Thank you, Chile. Let's move on with the Ministerial Delegation of Colombia. Good morning, everyone. I am Gabriela Gutierrez, Coordinator for International Affairs of the Ministry of Mining and Energy. We are here today with Felipe Jatiblanco, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Claudia Ortiz from the Ministry of International Affairs as well. We also have Julian Rojas, Head of the Regulation and Corporate Business of the Ministry of Mining and Energy. Thank you. Let's move on with the Ministerial Delegation of Costa Rica. Good morning, everyone. I am Rolando Castro, Vice Minister of Energy of the Ministry of Environment and Energy for Costa Rica. I am here in the delegation with Laura Lizano, the engineer and director of the Energy Subsector Secretariat. Thank you, Costa Rica. Let's move with the Ministerial Delegation of Cuba. Good morning, everyone. I am Ardey Cañete, Texas. I am here on behalf of the Ministry of Energy and Mining for Cuba. I am the Vice Director of the Ministry of the Directorate for the Use of Energy. Thank you, Cuba. Let us move on with the delegation for Ecuador. Good morning, everyone. I am Juan Carlos Bermeo. I am the Minister of Energy and Non-Renewable Natural Resources for the Republic of Ecuador, and I am here today with Vice Minister for Electricity, Engineer Gabriel Arguello. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for the Ecuador delegation. Let us move with the Ministerial Delegation of El Salvador. Good morning. I am Roberto Salazar Grande on behalf of Superintendent for Electricity and Telecommunications for El Salvador, Engineer Manuel Ernesto Aguilar Flores, who will be joining us in a brief moment. I wish for all the ministers and delegates and experts and all officials here to have a really good day. Thank you, El Salvador. We have no confirmation from Grenada. However, we do have representation from Grenada. If we do have it, please, this is your time to present yourselves. Grenada. So if we do not have Grenada here, let us move with Guatemala. Good morning, everyone. I am Alberto Pimentel Mata from Guatemala. I am here today with Engineer Eduardo Fuentes, General Director of Energy for the Ministry of Mining and Energy, and on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have Maria Uja, our ambassador. Thank you, Guatemala. Let's move on with the delegation of Guyana.
Good morning. I'm Prime Minister Mark Phillips. I have ministerial responsibility for energy, and I'm here at the meeting today with Ms. Wood from the Guyana Energy Agency.
Thank you, Guyana. We do not have confirmed participation for Haiti. We understand that we do not have anyone present for that delegation, so let us move on with the ministerial delegation for Honduras. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Secretary and distinguished members of OLADE. I am Miguel Angel Figueroa, General Director for Electricity and Markets for the Energy Secretariat on behalf of the Minister, Mr. Antonio Ordóñez Morfovich, and I'm here with Gloria Alvarenga, Director for Foreign Cooperation. Good morning. Thank you, Honduras. Let us move on with the ministerial presentation of Jamaica. We had confirmed participation from Jamaica, so perhaps they could let us know later if they join us. Let us move on with the ministerial delegation for Mexico. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the incoming chairmanship and the outgoing chairmanship. I wish you the utmost success in your work. I am Gerardo Barrios, and I am here on behalf of the Minister for the National Secretariat of Energy, and I hope that we will have a fruitful day today. Thank you, Mexico. Let us move on to the ministerial delegation of Nicaragua. Apparently, we do not have Nicaragua with us here today, so let us move on with the presentation of the ministerial delegation of Panama. Good morning, everyone. It is always a pleasure to greet you. I am Jorge Rivera Staff, National Secretariat for Energy. I am here joined by Guadalupe Gonzalez, National Electricity Director. A most warm welcome to Minister Paganini. I hope that you have a wonderful session today. Thank you, Panama. Let us now move on to the ministerial delegation of Paraguay. Good morning, everyone. I am Carlos Saldívar, Vice Minister for Mining and Energy from Asunción, Paraguay. I am joined here today with the Director for Alternative Energies, Gustavo Casal, and Director for Energy Resources, Felipe Bitham. I wish the warmest success to Omar Paganini. Thank you, Paraguay. Let us move on to the ministerial delegation for Peru. Good morning to all the officials and authorities here. At this time, the representative is the Vice Minister for Electricity, Mr. Jose Martin Avila Perez. Unfortunately, he will not be able to join us here today. He will be joining us in the afternoon, however, and he has asked me to participate on this meeting. I am David Arias from the National Division of Electricity. Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Peru. Let us move on to the ministerial delegation of Dominican Republic.
Muy buenos días.
Good morning. I am Gustavo Mejia Ricard. I am the Director of International Affairs for the Ministry of Energy and Mining from the Dominican Republic, and I am here on behalf of the Minister Antonio Almonte and Vice Minister Rafael Gomez, who, due to technical issues, cannot join us. Here with me today is Flavia Polanco, who also works in my division. Thank you. Thank you, Dominican Republic. Let us move on to the ministerial delegation for Suriname. We had verified that Suriname was here. Suriname, can you hear us? Perhaps they have ran into technical issues. They might introduce themselves via chat. Let us move on to the ministerial delegation of Trinidad and Tobago then.
Good morning once again. I am Stuart Young, Minister of Energy Industries in Trinidad and Tobago. I have with me the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Penelope Bradshaw Niles, and our Director of Research and Planning, Mr. Timothy Bash. Thank you.
Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. Let us move to the ministerial delegation of Uruguay. Good morning once again. I want to thank all of you for your welcome to the presidency. The Uruguayan delegation is myself, the minister, the Director of Energy, Fitzgerald Cantero, and the professionals of Energy Division. Thank you. Thank you, Uruguay. Let us move on to the ministerial delegation for Venezuela. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Minister of Oil, of Venezuela. I will be participating myself, Ronnie Romero, Director of International Affairs for the Ministry of Oil, and Yomi Perez, Internal Coordinator for OLADE. Thank you, Venezuela. The countries that could not introduce themselves, if you are here, this is the time to do it. If not, President and Secretariat, we have a sufficient quorum. We have 21 countries present in this meeting of ministers. Thank you, Tatiana. Mr. President, having the quorum been confirmed, we are now able to begin with the meeting. So I now propose we start reading the agenda for approval. Please, if you could show the agenda on the screen. Do you agree, Mr. President, for me to read the agenda? Okay, so we started at 8:45 with the inaugural session of the meeting of ministers number 51. We have covered the speech by the outgoing presidency, the speech by the incoming presidency, and the speech by the executive secretariat. Between 8:45 to 9, the installation, preparatory session, take over the meeting's presidency, ministerial delegations presentation, and approval of the agenda. That is what we're doing right now. Later on, we will move into the ministerial dialogue, both political and strategic, with the keynote speeches by Patricia Espinosa, Francisco La Cámara, and Mary Bruce Warlick. Then at 9:20, we will begin with the development of the ministerial dialogue, agendas for the decarbonization of the energy sector, with opening speech by the manager of the Infrastructure and Energy Division of the IDB and participation of all member countries. Then between 11:50 and 11:10, we will have observers' participation. Then later on, between 11:10 and 11:30, we will have an open session, a presentation by the Executive Secretary. Then we will have an approval of ministerial declaration for the 51st meeting of ministers 2021 and a presentation by Argentina. We will then have a break. During that break, we will carry out an activity for RELAC. You can use the same link, and then we will go back between 2 and 3 to the admin work for the ministerial decisions approval, for the budget, for the audit report approval, and for the approval of the resilience and vulnerability of the energy sector to climate change ministerial decision. Then we will be selecting the venue for the 52nd meeting of ministers for 2022. And in order to approve that venue, then we will move on to the closure by the presidency and the executive secretary. So, Mr. President, if you agree.
If there are no further comments, we can move on to approve the agenda by the delegations. Yes, we agree. Thank you. Okay, I would like to suggest having the approval stage in terms of objections. So if we have no objections, we would approve the agenda. Okay, so not having received any objections to the proposed agenda, for the sake of time, Mr. President, then we would move to the first item on the agenda, which is the ministerial, political, and strategic dialogue, by starting with the conferences, the first of which will be in charge of the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention by Patricia Espinosa. She will be giving us a brief overview on the results of the COP26 and the link with our region. So, Patricia, Executive Secretary of the Framework Convention of the UN on Climate Change, the floor is yours. Please, you may proceed.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to be here and to speak about our recently completed negotiations in Glasgow and what they mean for all of us moving forward. Negotiations around a topic as complex as climate change are difficult, reaching agreements even more so. Such is the nature of consensus building and inclusive multilateralism. I am encouraged, however, that we left Glasgow with clarity on the work we need to undertake to reach the 1.5-degree goal. In that vein, I would like to highlight 4 accomplishments coming out of COP26 that represent significant progress in the world's efforts against climate change. First is the matter of adaptation, which has been central in all our conversations at this COP. And the text adopted recognize this relevance. It also speaks to the fact that people recognize just how important adaptation is. For so long, the focus has been on mitigation. Mitigation, of course, is extremely important. However, I think this COP really showed that adaptation will no longer be a secondary topic, but one of equal importance to mitigation. After COP26, we now have a work program to define the global goal on adaptation. This will allow us to identify the collective needs and solutions for the climate impacts already happening now in all regions of the world. And the Santiago Network, a network that is about providing technical support for countries to address and manage loss and damage related to climate change, has now been enhanced. This will strengthen global efforts towards resilience. The second matter is finance. All parties agreed that much more support needs to be provided to developing countries. They recognized that the most vulnerable cannot be ignored, that much more finance for adaptation is needed, and that it must be predictable. And while we also welcome the call to at least double finance for adaptation, the actual needs are still very much beyond what is currently available. Parties must continue to focus on this issue. Parties did not, however, resolve the Paris Agreement pledge that would see $100 billion mobilized from developed nations to developing. This is disappointing, and I told all parties they must make this a reality by next year. After all, this is not just about the $100 billion. It is critical that we initiate the process for the definition of the new global goal on finance as soon as possible. On another front, we came into COP26 knowing we had a significant emissions gap. To address it, parties collectively agreed to look for ways to increase actions to closing that gap. There can be no doubting the urgency of this task. This will be a significant area of focus as we move forward. And lastly, COP26 also saw the finalization of guidelines for the full implementation of the Paris Agreement. For those of you who follow our process closely, you will know that this is a very significant accomplishment. After 6 years of intense negotiations, we have reached a compromise on the pending issue of Article 6. Making Article 6 operational will allow parties to scale up their cooperation, mobilize additional finance and private sector engagement, and ensure that the rules are the same for everyone. This may not be a headline issue for the public, but it is a major step forward. Another significant step forward was the finalization of negotiations on the enhanced transparency framework. This will allow all parties to continue building trust, which is absolutely crucial as we move forward. There were several more accomplishments in many different areas. We also saw significant announcements in the non-process part of the COP, including announcements related to finance, forestry, ending coal, and work specific to cities and communities. I believe that at COP26, parties built a bridge between good intentions and measurable actions to lower emissions, increase resilience, and provide much-needed finance. A bridge leading to the historic transformation we must make to achieve rapid reductions this decade and ultimately towards a 1.5-degree goal. The energy sector, of course, will play a crucial role in that transformation. It is no exaggeration to say that energy is at the heart of the climate change emergency, and it must be at the heart of its solution. And if we are to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, nations must commit to a deep and lasting transformation of how they create, use, and distribute energy. Indeed, it is only through a deep decarbonization pathway that we significantly reduce emissions this decade and ultimately get to net zero emissions by 2050. There is no separate path. There is no alternate universe. There is no plan B. This is simply what we must do. But our work is cut out for us. It's not enough to pick the low-hanging fruit of replacing one energy-polluting activity with a slightly less climate-damaging alternative. Shifting to less carbon-intensive energy sources remains important, of course, but that alone does not get us to our climate goals. The good news is that proven technologies for a net zero energy system already exist. Some renewables are now the cheapest option to produce electricity in many parts of the world, but their deployment must be accelerated. For their part, governments must lead the way in planning and promoting the required clean energy infrastructure investment, including in matters of transmission and distribution. But we don't have a moment to lose. The climate stakes couldn't be any higher. I will leave it to my IRENA colleague, the Director General, Francesco La Camera, to perhaps speak in more detail about energy solutions for a green future. Let me conclude by saying that despite our accomplishments in Glasgow, we are still far off the trajectory of stabilizing global temperature rise at 1.5 degrees. We must see more climate action this decade to achieve it. I want to thank you for your valuable contributions in these very challenging 2 years leading up to COP26. But our work did not end in Glasgow. Time still remains short. The climate emergency still is with us. Our work together, therefore, begins immediately. Thank you.
Agradecemos el importante mensaje.
I would like to thank the very important message given by General Secretary of the Framework Convention of the United Nations for Climate Change after the convention, which I understand is a huge contribution to our region. Mr. President, if you agree, I would like to invite the General Director of the International Energy Agency for Renewable Energies, IRENA, to join us with a presentation on the situation of renewables worldwide and how to approach them in our region. Yes, of course, I would love to welcome Francesco. Our good friend, Francesco. We have recently signed a renewal of our agreement between OLADE and IRENA, so the work and the link between IRENA and OLADE is always present. Francesco, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Nice that receiving the floor from you as a president, and congratulations for your appointment. And thanks, Alfonso. It's nice to see you. Just a few days that we signed the renewal of our memorandum of understanding between the to our organization. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is my great pleasure to be part again of such an important meeting for the Latin America and the Caribbean region. And I would like to thank OLADE for convening this discussion and inviting me to contribute. The outcome of COP26 a few weeks ago, as very clearly Patricia just said, gives still hopes for the possibility of achieving the 1.5 Celsius goal. And we have seen many more countries committed to achieving net zero by 2050. The Glasgow Climate Pact requests countries, inter alia, to revisit and strengthen their climate plans by the end of 2022 to align with the Paris temperature goals objective. ARENA is committed to support countries in the 1.5 Celsius pathway by positioning renewable energy at the core of climate action. Since last year, we have provided assistance in the revision and implementation of national determined contribution to 72 countries worldwide, including 21 for your region, one of the most active regions for ARENA regarding climate action support. With the submission of the revised climate ambition, we expect to continue working with Latin American and Caribbean countries in their implementation process to bring climate pledges to reality. In this respect, we play a valuable role in the established climate investment platform, a partnership among ARENA, UNDP, C4All, in collaboration with the Green Climate Fund, and the new Energy Transition Accelerator Fund, the so-called ETAF, recently launched at COP26 as a partnership between ARENA and the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. The UAE, the ARENA host country, has already committed $400 million. The facility aims to mobilize $1 billion and leverage funding up to $3 billion. We are also keen to support countries in the region who wish to revisit and strengthen their 2030 climate plans. In this effort, ARENA's World Energy Transition Outlook can serve as a tool to align countries' energy transition pathway with 1.5 degree objective of the Paris Climate Agreement. In line with this scenario, it is expected that renewables energy will provide 93% of the power generation in Latin America and the Caribbean by 2050, with solar PV and hydropower having the largest installed capacity with 281 gigawatt and 2040 gigawatt respectively. Furthermore, the energy transition will bring to the region important socioeconomic benefits, reflecting in a 2.5% higher GDP under this transforming scenario, and the potential of creating more than 3.2 million jobs from renewables by 2050. ARENA is now focusing its efforts in providing its member countries with more detailed and tailored-made scenario to guide the development of the energy sector at sub-regional level. For instance, ARENA is finalizing the renewable energy roadmap for Central America. It highlights the key role of renewable energy in enhancing energy security in the region by mitigating fossil fuel imports. Reaching the transforming energy scenario in Central America could reduce 70% of the sector's emission by 2050, led by electrification of the end-use sector and universal access to clean cooking fuels and technologies. A similar regional study will start for South America in the coming month, and all South American countries are invited to actively engage with this effort. It will provide key insight into necessary action to achieve a net zero energy sector by mid-century. These roadmaps will serve as input towards the development of the regional energy transition outlook, which will include a more holistic analysis of the socioeconomic impacts of the energy transition at sub-regional level. A regional energy transition outlook for Latin America and the Caribbean will also be implemented in the near future. These efforts are only possible with the support of strategic partnership that enhance the outreach and impact of our support and activities. With this in mind, as I just say, we have been strengthening our cooperation with regional organizations in Latin America and the Caribbean, with a common objective to support countries in their energy transition. This weekend, we have renewed our memorandum of understanding with OLADE for an indefinite period. We are aware of the high importance of our partnership and collaboration in the region, and the key words that OLADE has been undertaking to ensure sustainable development of the Latin America and Caribbean energy sector. These memorandums will leverage on our existing area of cooperation, such as information and statistics, capacity building activities, country engagement, knowledge dissemination, and project facilitation. The memorandum will also set the basis for expand our activities, promote the regional energy integration, and maximize the diversity of renewable energy sources endowed by the countries in the region. Strengthening collaboration with OLADE and other partners in the region will be important in supporting countries in achieving the 1.5 temperature goal of the Paris Agreement. It will also allow countries in being successful in the implementation of regional targets, such as the one framed under the RELAC initiative. ARENA is one of the support organizations of RELAC and has been working side by side with the member country, the Inter-American Development Bank, and OLADE in developing the Energy Compact within the framework of the UN high-level dialogue, aiming to give more visibility to one of the most ambitious renewable targets worldwide. We expect that the action taken under the RELAC will help keep the Latin America and Caribbean region on the right path to achieving an accelerated energy transition, enhance the socio-economic benefits of renewable energy, and further support a sustainable, just, and climate-resilient energy future for all. To conclude, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the energy transition is already happening, and this is simply unstoppable. We have made some good progress so far, but now it's time to turn plans into action and close the gap toward the future, because we have not much time, as Patricia has reminded us. ARENA, with a vision driving global energy transition with renewables, is here and ready to work with all countries and all relevant stakeholders along the challenging but rewarding journeys toward the carbon neutral future and the more resilient, inclusive, and equitable world. So I wish, my friend, fruitful deliberation. And thank you very much for having me with you in this special occasion. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señor Director General Francesco Lacamera.
Thank you, Director General Francesco Lacamera. It is always a pleasure to have you join us in this meeting of ministers. We share your vision. In previous editions, you have also mentioned this, and we agree with you. Mr. President, let us now move on to another global agency with which OLADE has strong ties. Let us hear this agency's vision of the energy sector, something that we believe is important for regional decision makers to understand global trends and to understand the path that this energy sector is going through and where we stand as a region. I want to call Mary Bruce Werlick for the IEA. A warm welcome to you, and to Fatih Birol as well, General Director for the IEA. Mr. President, if you agree, we will move on to the IEA.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Executive Secretary Blanco, ministers, and dear colleagues from OLADE and across the Latin America. Let me just start by saying it's truly a great pleasure for me to join you today. for the 51st OLADE ministerial meeting, and I would like to begin by extending very warm regards from IEA Executive Director Dr. Fatih Birol and his best wishes for a successful ministerial meeting. I understand that the next item on today's agenda will focus on decarbonization agendas, which is an increasingly important and urgent priority for governments around the world, as many of us recently observed at COP26. At the IEA, we've been very pleased to work closely with OLADE and many Latin American countries to help identify the right policies and technologies that reduce energy sector emissions and lead to decarbonization. And we look forward very much to continuing to increase all of this cooperation. Today, I will share some key insights from the IEA's recent work, drawing on the 2021 World Energy Outlook, which includes updated scenarios that lead to decarbonization. This special edition of the WEO explores the transformation of the energy sector in detail, and it takes governments by their word regarding the net zero pledges that have been announced. The result is what we call an announced pledges scenario. We also include a scenario which maintains 1.5 degrees warming within reach, that is based on our highly ambitious net zero by 2050 report. And the WEO also reviews the varied opportunities and benefits that lie along this challenging way, and it looks at what the transformation of the global energy sector means for energy security. One point is clear: even after a round of breakthroughs at COP26, climate ambitions have never been higher, but the energy and emissions data still does not match the rhetoric. Over the last 20 years, global CO2 emissions have risen substantially. Cumulative emissions since pre-industrial times have warmed the Earth by more than 1 degree. Before 2015, we were on track for emissions growth out to 2050, leading to a catastrophic level of warming of around 3.5 degrees in 2100. And since the Paris Agreement, the energy sector is very different. New policies and technologies mean our temperature projections to 2100 are now down by almost 1 degree. That is from 3.5 degrees Celsius to 2.6 degrees Celsius. But this is still well above the temperature goal of the Paris Agreement. And without substantially scaling up our ambitions and actions, we are facing what could be unacceptable risks. In the last year or so, countries accounting for up to 70% of global emissions have announced net zero targets, and almost 120 countries have announced new policy ambitions, which account for slightly more than half of global emissions. If these announced pledges are fully implemented, 2030 would mark the first time since the Industrial Revolution that fossil fuel emissions ended the decade lower than they started it. And this would put the world within striking distance of the temperature goal of limiting warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. But despite the potential progress that can be made based on announced pledges, there is still a substantial gap to limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And these new pledges are laudable, but close only 20% of the gap between our current trajectory and a net zero path. This leaves an ambition gap of almost 14 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions in 2030, or nearly the entire emissions of the OECD in 2019. In the longer term, by 2050, these new pledges close about 40% of that gap, but that still leaves us with the risk of hitting irreversible climate tipping points like sea level rise, as well as other major environmental crises. And meeting the Paris Agreement's objective of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees requires reaching net zero emissions by 2050. So without global concrete commitments now to reach net zero by 2050, we will lock in emissions and we will not make sufficient progress in innovation in clean energy technologies to get us there. The good news is the policies and technologies that we need to close the ambition gap through 2030 already exist, and they can be deployed promoting economic recovery and creating jobs. We estimate that 60% of the additional power generation from wind and solar required in this decade could be achieved cost effectively without threatening other electricity sources or prices. And more than half a gigaton of additional emissions reductions needed in this period could be achieved through cost-effective measures in the power sector, in particular hydropower expansion in emerging markets. And lifetime extensions for nuclear facilities are also a part of this. Reducing methane emissions from fossil fuel operations could reduce about 1.7 gigatons of CO2 emissions through measures that are technically well known. Over 103 countries, plus the European Union, have joined the new Global Methane Pledge, which set a goal of reducing global methane emissions by at least 30% from 2020 levels by 2030. Another large contribution will be made by energy efficiency. We estimate that end-use efficiency could provide another 1 gigaton of cost-effective reductions between now and 2030 through the strengthening of fuel economy standards, particularly in trucks, appliance performance standards, and industrial energy efficiency. And the remainder of reductions needed to close the ambition gap to 2030 come from a combination of demand reductions and investments in technologies such as hydrogen, advanced batteries, CCUS, synthetic fuels, and advanced biofuels. But looking ahead further to 2050, and this is really an important point, a transition to net zero emissions will require developing new technologies to tackle emissions in sectors like long distance transport and heavy industries, for which technologies are still at demonstration or even prototype stage. In 2050, almost 50% of CO2 emissions reductions in the net zero scenario come from such technologies that are currently not yet commercial. So there's a huge role for a boost in innovation. And our analysis shows that globally, $90 billion will be needed to be mobilized as soon as possible to complete a portfolio of demonstration projects before 2030. And this compares with roughly $25 billion currently budgeted by governments to 2030. So this is clearly an important area to raise our ambition. So to conclude, the world's overall transition to net zero will come with many milestones, and countries will proceed, of course, according to their individual pathways with their respective priorities around technology and policy. Overall, our analysis shows that clean electrification, energy efficiency, clean fuels, methane abatement, and innovation are all crucial to close the ambition gap with a 1.5 degree future over the next decade. And within this, cutting methane emissions from fossil fuel operations is really a relatively low-hanging fruit that could reduce about 1.7 gigatons of CO2 emissions globally. Investment trends are beginning to show that a new global energy economy is emerging. However, the transformation will not be easy. The IEA's Commission on People-Centered Energy Transitions, with important contributions by Minister Jobé of Chile, Minister Mesa of Colombia, Secretary Nale of Mexico, and Secretary Rivera of Panama, this year produced a key set of recommendations on how to ensure that no one is left behind. And as top policymakers, you have it in your hands to decide the direction of travel for the global energy sector. A wave of investment and commitments in support of a net zero future was an unmistakable signal of a new direction from Glasgow. So let me conclude finally by re-emphasizing that IEA stands very ready to continue to work with countries all across Latin America and with OLADE to seize the opportunities and tackle the challenges presented by the global transition to net zero. Please know that you can count on our expertise and technology neutral approach to help you chart your own pathway in the most cost-effective, but also socially sustainable manner. So thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all the very best for the ministerial. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, directora ejecutiva adjunta.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Director, Ms. Warwick, for your overview on this energy outlook at the IEA and these main conclusions and remarks. Mr. President, if you agree, now we would move on to the last presenter that we have for this first part of the agenda with our keynote speakers. So I would like to ask Ariel Shepes, Manager of the Department of Infrastructure and Energy. Ariel, welcome. We are always pleased to have the support of the IDB, and in this case in particular, in this Energy Week, well, you know that the IDBs work throughout the week, coordinating a number of activities that we've had. Well, it's a pleasure. And now we have you in this Energy Week in a new position, so welcome. The floor is yours, Mr. President. Yes, please, he may proceed. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, distinguished ministers. Thank you, Alfonso, for the invitation. Can you hear me? I don't know if you can see my video. Oh, there you go. Here I am. Yeah, we heard you loud and clear, Ariel. Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of this very important event. As I was saying, distinguished ministers, as always, it's an honor to address you in this ministerial meeting on the 6th Energy Week. At the IDB, we have defined 5 main areas as part of our 2025 vision, which are regional integration, support to SMEs, digital transformation, gender equality, and climate change action. Energy transition is a key point for our 2025 vision, considering that it touches on a number of areas through an economic and social development that must be sustainable and inclusive. Making progress in this sense will not be easy. We are at a critical time for Latin America and the Caribbean, and no other region has been more affected than ours because of the pandemic. The region has experienced steps back equivalent to 12 years in poverty reduction. Of the 43 million jobs that were lost, we still have 30% to be recovered. The impact has been especially harmful on women. The share as part of the workforce has been particularly affected because they had to take on the biggest part of childcare and care of the elderly. So as part of this challenging scenario, we know that our region has the cleanest energy mix thanks to hydroelectrical energy and new renewable technologies such as PV or wind power. Its growth rate has been above the world's average. And as a matter of fact, over the last decade, the installed capacity for wind power and solar energy has multiplied by 40 times, which is great news for the region. The share of renewables as part of our energy mixes has been constant. Whenever we talk about the energy mix as a whole, we talk about 58%. This is mainly due to the fact that Latin America and the Caribbean are regions that are developing really fast, and we're expecting energy demands to keep on growing after the pandemic at a rate of 3% annually, which makes it even more challenging for us to walk towards decarbonization. We need to overcome financial and non-financial obstacles to accelerate investments in renewables. And I was pleased to see in the presentation given by Ms. Warwick the important component of renewables and their influence in the transformation of all the actions that are to be implemented to reduce decarbonization globally. Latin America is no exception. Amongst the main factors we have identified in terms of how to make progress in having a bigger share of renewables in our energy mixes, we have the modernization of our regulatory frameworks and the design of an electrical market that will allow us to have more investments in renewables, particularly regional integration in matters of electrical issues is key to incorporate more renewables to our mixes with energy security and make our countries more resilient to climate change. We have great dependency on hydroelectrical energy, so we need to strengthen the relationships between countries to back each other up when in times of drought. But we also need to get the most out of our hydroelectrical resources. Because of this, we will keep on giving the best of our support to integration initiatives for markets such as CIEPAC, CIESUR, CINEA, and Arco Norte. Another important issue that we need to undertake as a region to meet the Paris agreements is the transportation sector. This sector accounts for about 40% of CO2 emissions in our region, which is well above the global average. In this sense, it is important to think of a dual strategy that will not only promote renewables and electric vehicles, but also that will allow us to have more electrified transportation systems. Making progress in renewables is not important. It's not only important because we want to fight against climate change, but also because we want to encompass the measures that are being implemented to tackle the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, to increase the number of jobs. And these situations are would create 3 times more jobs if we compare it to their equivalent in terms of fossil fuels. Digitalization is also important, and that is transforming the energy sector with the potential to decrease supply costs and increase quality resilience, and also making it more available for the most vulnerable ones. Digitalization is also necessary to manage and address fast responses for the inclusion of renewables such as solar and wind power. An economy that works towards decarbonization means a greater transformation, not only for the energy systems, but also that makes it easier to have more inclusion and gender equality in our societies. In that sense, from the IDP, we've been promoting inclusion in this energy transition. We are committed to promoting a greater participation of women in the energy sector so that both men and women can benefit from the jobs created in the sector. This is also part of our vision. Another priority is to bridge the access gap, which is still persisting in our region. In spite of the great advancements that we've made, more than 18 million people do not have access to electricity in our region, and we need to make solid steps in this regard. I'd like to make one final remark. I'd like to say again, as Francesco La Camara said, that you're all invited to the meeting that we will hold after the Relax initiative. And as you well know, the aim of this is to promote the participation of renewables in our mixes. Considering that our energy transition is such a complex task, we need to be extremely cooperative internationally to exchange best practices and our experiences and great technical support to mobilize financial resources and human resources to work in this direction. RELAC is a climate action platform that will allow us to work together and to be much more effective as a region to accelerate this transition. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Have my warmest regards, and I wish a successful meeting to you all, and of course that you can achieve great results for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ariel. Mr. President, if you agree, I'd like to invite everyone to take a virtual family photo so that we have a record of this event, so that we can close the open session of this ministerial meeting and move on to the closed session for the political and strategic dialogue of our countries. So if you agree, Mr. President, I'll ask everyone to please turn on their cameras to take this family photo, and then we'll move on to the political and strategic dialogue. Excellent idea, Alfonso. Let's do that. Thank you. I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to thank all the delegations that have come to our headquarters. At the headquarters, we have representatives from the Hungarian embassy, the Uruguayan embassy, our good friend Ricardo Arua, ambassador of Uruguay and Ecuador, representatives of the Guatemalan embassy, also the Costa Rican embassy, the consulate of Trinidad and Tobago, the Peruvian embassy, and representatives of the Argentinian embassy. So thank you so much for being here with us at our headquarters here in Quito. Feel welcome to this very important event of regional dialogue. It's a pleasure having you here. Okay, so Mr. President, we are moving on to the next table. We will have the Energy Director and also Minister Omar Paganini. Welcome Fitzgerald to preside this table. This political and strategic dialogue has been chosen as part of the content dialogue that we need to give to our region. Nowadays, in Latin America and the Caribbean, what we're mainly discussing is decarbonization processes and how our region needs to walk down these lanes towards decarbonization. We have consensus in this regard, in that economies need to tend to becoming less carbon-based economies, but we still don't have a